people are starting to think about their Halloween one-shots, which even just like let's call it a side quest in your campaign, where suddenly there's something that very spooky Halloweenish that happens. So the question is, what is an idea that you have for a 3-act one-shot?
I promise I'll keep this short. His name was Sven. When he arrived in the village, he was bloodied, half naked, and rambling wide-eyed about bugs and white fire. The priestess took him in for the night and did her best to feed him, but he refused to eat. After sundown, his ramblings became louder and less coherent as she helped him to bed and covered him in a blanket. As she bid him good night, his fingers clamped down painfully on her arm, and he stared her in the eye. "Terror brews in Sun Hall," he croaked. Terrified, she pried his fingers off her arm and fled the room, screaming. Nobody else dared approach him all night. In the morning, Sven was gone. No disturbances were reported. All he left behind was the bruise on the priestess's arm and a charred corpse still curled up beneath an unburnt blanket. That is the beginning, the hook for a one-shot that I will be running. Well, it's not a one-shot. I agree with the 3-act thing, but I didn't think I could fit a story into one, so I'm making it 3 separate sessions. I really liked the article that you linked with this question, and I found that most of what I had written was already filling in the lines in between that article, and I edited it so it fit completely within, and I feel like it just made everything better. My goal for this is going to be, first it has to be a hook for horror, like they have to have a goal of being somewhere. The second part would be something like the players slowly learn what is wrong. They've had this feeling of unease the entire time. And then the third act is going to be like maybe a couple of jump scares and a final fight with the thing that was haunting them the whole time. I think one of the most important things to keep in mind for one-shots, and especially horror one-shots for Halloween, is that failure is an option. These characters don't have to exist for the next session because there's only going to be one. And I personally am a fan of horror one-shots where it ends up being a TPK and the DM just does a epilogue quickly of what their failure means for the rest of the world. That's just my personal preference.
Well, now I feel like mine's lame. I don't have a cool intro and stuff like that to it. I was just with movement and everything, mine's a little more simple, and I don't have a cool way of putting it, so I'm just gonna say it. Basically, my idea was to have like a headless man, almost feels like a corpse, almost feels like a scarecrow, kind of start walking into town, kind of shambling into a village, and everyone's terrified. Nobody wants to go near it because it's a headless thing, right? Body. The players have a choice. They can either attack it or try to communicate with it. Well, the idea is that they try to communicate with it. It's not going to be aggressive at all unless attacked. So the idea is that they basically play charades with it and try to find out that it is missing its head. It's supposed to have a head. It has one. It's just missing. Or they attack it, like I said. So if they attack it, then it runs away. It's terrified, it bolts. The second act is either them trying to find the headless body or trying to find the head. Because through the game of charades, they would find it. So you can use it a similar structure. It's just very different, The head would end up being a pumpkin because it's Halloween, obviously. But this town, they have lots of pumpkins, lots of jack-o'-lanterns. So you have to figure out which one it is, and you can throw a mimic in there. You can throw some other fun stuff like that in there. But through it all, you would find the head. Once you find the head, you realize he was trying to warn you about a big bad vampire coming to town. Then the fight ends with the boss fight of the big bad vampire, but you are prepared for it and you have an extra NPC to help you. If you find the body and you kill it, then you can okay, well, after a while, you guys are relaxing, you're enjoying your brews after a good day's work, and then, boom, this monster attacks. And you don't have the extra help of the NPC. And so it makes it a much harder, like you're saying, it's okay for a TPK to end your thing. So it might be a TPK if you didn't, prepare for it as well. Not saying it will be or whatever, but it's a one shot, so it's really hard to do too much. I've found that my one shots, every time I try to write one shot, I overwrite it. So I try to keep it simple, especially because like you don't know how long charades is going to take, how many times they're going to try poking the body, how many, how long it's going to take to find the head or the man himself. So
a lot of people can relate to that. We're running a one shot that turns into a 2 or 3 shot. Dennis was self-aware, saying, "I know this isn't a one shot." So planning accordingly is smart. Often it's about like focusing in on like some really simple concepts and just doing them very well.
What I thought was, I was thinking of a variation on, I don't know if you've seen the original film, A Woman in Black, which is a British film, a ghost story. Basically, it's about a vengeful spirit of a woman. She was fleeing her abusive husband and she went drowned. And in this town, on the anniversary of her death, or every 5 years or whatever, she comes in and kills a child in this village. Nira the witch in this story. And basically, the players are in this tavern in this kind of remote town, this creepy place. And I would say moors, this kind of thing, the bogs, the moors and whatnot. And they hear, as they're there, this woman comes into the tavern and sees her little kid under a table he's been playing cooking. She quickly grabs him and takes him away. And they find out from the bartender this story of Nira the witch and how her husband, Lord Meldros, realized she was sacrificing their children. That's why they were dying, and he killed her. Now she's mad, and so on the anniversary of her death, she comes to town and kills a child. The real story that the players find out later is she was being abused by this guy, and she ran to town and asked for help, and all the townspeople just shut their doors. They were afraid of Lord Meldros, and he came, took her away, beat her again, locked her away. She tried to escape with her son, and she drowned in the moors, both of them. So this is the setup, and we don't know this story until the end, that the villagers are all doing this, but this woman comes running in, and she's holding this little toy soldier, and her son is gone, and the toy soldier is what Nira leaves when she takes a child, right? And everyone just sits there in the tavern. They're saying, help us, and everyone's just ignoring her. They're all sort of like, glad it's not my kid. So the players, that's the hook. The players get involved. And the husband of this woman says, I can guide you across the moors. Then we're going to have some confrontation, and the mood of horror and terror grows as they go closer and closer to this ruined castle where no one ever visits anymore because they know Nira haunts it. You may have an encounter here where I was thinking I have these ghost towns that I got from, I think, Eberron that attack. You may lose the husband, which means, how are we going to get back? Of course, it is a one-shot, so it doesn't matter as much. Once they get to the house, there's a number of ghosts. I'm going to have these 2 twin ghosts, 2 children, like the shining ghosts who have abilities. And then as it turns out, she's got this kid that she's kidnapping, and she goes out and reenacts this death at midnight on the anniversary. So the players have this amount of time. They can either try to confront Nira. She's a pretty powerful ghost. And again, this is all dependent on their level. Or they find her child's room with these toy soldiers, where actually Meldros, the ghost, is there. And if they can defeat Meldros, because he's bitter, about this whole thing, they can win stop her. They can learn the truth. She realizes what happened, and she will go away and find peace. So you can just adjust how many ghosts you want in this place depending on the level of the party. So you have a little bit, you got your hook, you've got your mystery, your second act, kind of when you're crossing the moors, and then the final confrontation with the ghosts.
I especially like it when one-shots have like multiple possible endings without it being super complicated. I could see some players latching onto that toy soldier, investigating the room and that sort of stuff and going that route, and others just kind of going with the traditional adventure, let's go deal with this ghost.
Yeah, and how much they investigate the story of this too and try to see if people are lying. Is there a story behind this, deception, whatnot? What's the real story here? It depends. There's some players that'll just, that's our mission, let's go. They just know that.
My idea is actually to do what a lot of people were trying to do every Halloween, and that is take Ravenloft, the original adventure from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And of course, it's way too long to run as a one-shot, but everybody wants to do that. So I'm just going to suggest what I understand is the way you run Ravenloft in Ravenloft Castle, because that's all you can deal with as a one-shot, and that is you get an invitation to a castle from a mysterious individual who promises great things, but also requires assistance from you. For whatever reason, it's probably going to be an invite from the Burgomaster, who's in fact dead. Of course, you come for dinner, have a conversation. You can't leave because there's a terrible storm and you have to stay. That would be the first part of your first act. And then your second act would be you have to stay the night because you can't leave the castle and there's nowhere else to stay, but he's got plenty of rooms for you to sleep in. So you can have a room, not a problem. And of course, while you're trying to sleep, all sorts of weird and strange things happen which force you to go and explore the castle. That's your second act. I always found with horror is you always present the threat of battle and fighting, but never actually do it. because as soon as you fight, it's not that scary anymore. If you can string it out so that the things they're dealing with don't actually fight them or they're unfightable, but they still present a threat, that's probably the best way to go. The last act is when Strahd reveals himself to be what he is, this true horrifying vampire who's been watching what they've been doing and generally just toying with them with his minions, and this is where you have your final confrontation, which is probably going to be horrible. And I would do this at level 1. I would be ruthless as a dungeon master. Ravenloft was never designed for level 1 characters. I believe it's level 5 to 7, because level 1 you are like, fighting is a bad idea. So that means that the final act, everybody's sort of like, when do I do that? Because how much stuff can I build in the middle? And the thing is, it doesn't matter how much stuff you build in. Your act 1 can be done very quickly. Your act 2 will be as long as you need it to be. That last hour, you've only got an hour left of play. No matter what's happening, this is when Strahd reveals himself. And that's what I would do with a one-shot Ravenloft adventure if you're trying to do it in your game. And I've just told you everything that I was planning to say in a video that was upcoming. So that seems like a very bad idea on my part. And for those of you who feel like, I've kind of done that before, I'm going to suggest an alternative, which has got really the same sort of structure, and that is Scooby-Doo. If you can't go horror and scare, then go horror and funny. And so Scooby-Doo is the way to go. Like, you have the premise of a monster that's terrorizing locals. The group comes in to investigate to find out what it is or to stop the monster. They wind up spending a lot of their time fleeing and trying to figure out where it is. And then you open it up and they either kill it or demask it, discovering that in fact it was the janitor.
I think Zipperon Disney did a feature a few years ago when he was doing the Strahd Must Die, like the one-shot Castle Ravenloft adventure. I think that's a pretty cool way to do it. I really like the idea, like you said, putting like a real-world time limit on it. I'm not always a fan of, because I once was in a battle where my turn didn't even come up yet, and the DM's like, the alarm went off, and now you're fighting a Balrog, and you're level 5, and it's like, guess I'll die. I didn't even get a turn yet because everyone was just slow. So I didn't enjoy that. But if you say you have about 2 hours to explore this castle and try to find tools that will help you, part of Curse of Strahd is like there's certain items, right, that can help you against Strahd. That would be cool to be like, you better explore fast. Time limit creates tension, right? Some ideas I had. One was, I'll plug a few of that. My wife has actually made some like one shots that could be like short campaign arcs for our Patreon. One's called the Tome of Desmond. Really great stuff she did there. It's about an island with some necromancy going on. It's pretty cool. And then she also did one called the Porcelain Moppet, and that one was free. She did like 3 parts on our. We once tried doing Flutes Tober or Loot Tober. That's what it was. And we did like content daily, and it like burnt us out. So we'll never do it again. But one thing she did as part of that was made this like little one-shot thing. It's free. What Fred went with, I also thought Death House in Curse of Strahd makes a great one-shot. I've done that, I think, 2 times when I was getting used to running online. Low stress one shot for me to run where I could really lean into just trying horror. I wanted to come up with a new idea and one that I've actually run before. I once did one where I really played into the presence of a hag coven, making everyone in a town kind of more aggravated and more sinful. And so the players arrive in this place and all of a sudden there's like adultery happening, children and parents just screaming at each other, and just all these horrible things that often like are behind closed doors, like within like abusive families that you don't see, but like people are like openly in the streets like just being horrible to each other. And it's this coven having an effect on the people. And basically Act 1 is them interacting with people and seeing all these horrible things, catching on that some children have gone missing in the woods, classic hag storyline. And then Act 2 is like going out to like the exploration of the forest that almost becomes like a bog, like Kevin was saying. The different denizens there, you can use them as much as you want because you want to make sure that you have enough time for Act 3, which is the actual place where the hag coven is, and you want to give them a lot of space in like a grove type area, and you want to use all their little trinkets of like weird hag magic, toads that are filled with bees and stuff like that, and they throw that and it like creates a wall of thorns. Really play up that these are scary hags and it's going to be an intense encounter, but you also got to save the kids. As for a new idea, I recently reviewed the Alchemy Almanac. There was a really cool concept in there for a potion you can make that is like one of the master level potions, and it's called Ambrosia. It's interesting because the component to make it is unicorn blood. But if you drink it, and you are evil, it will kill you. If you are not evil and you drink it, you get to cast the wish spell. And I thought this was very interesting because the more I thought about it, the more I loved it. It's very like Voldemort, Harry Potter type thing with the unicorn blood. Because it's like if you make it, you killed a unicorn. You're inherently evil. Or if you hired someone else to do it, sin by association, indirect, capitalism type sin, and so you're still evil. And even if you just like came about it, if you want to make a wish, that evil can creep in your heart and you're like, what if I die? Will I get a wish? So it's like, who is pure enough and has the right circumstances that they could actually use it without just dying? And I think the way that it was written is they don't just die, like they explode. And so I thought it would be an interesting one shot to have like kind of like a Romeo and Juliet thing. The young man or the young woman has kind of been fed information about the local alchemist guild. They have a dose of ambrosia, but they don't tell anyone about it, and no one's going to use it, but they have it. And they end up stealing it with some of their resources as nobles. Maybe they hire a team or something like that. And maybe the team is going to try to take it because they find out what it is. So you're tasked by their father, like, oh, my boy's gone missing, like, go find, maybe you're told what happened by the alchemist who made it, and they're like, you got to stop him, he's gonna blow up if he drinks this. Act 2, you go find the kid and you like try to deal with that. Maybe there are some demons or the rivals that you have to take care of as well. You find out the kid got the information from a rival noble house, one of the biggest ones, and basically you can go to confront them, and I'm going to have it be that they're actually a Rakshasa, and they love eating people, the more of a delicacy they are, and that sort of thing, and kind of go to like the House of Horrors type thing where it like seems like a nice mansion, but if you really start finding the secret doors and that sort of stuff, it's a horror show, and the Rakshasa can reveal themselves. Because I really like the idea of a Rakshasa and like all their lore. So anyway, I just shotgunned to finish this off with a whole bunch of Halloween one-shot ideas, some free ones, some ideas, or some more structured ones.
I'm reminded of in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, there actually is I think it's a one-shot adventure called House of Lament, where the party goes and explores haunted house. And it sort of follows that same process where Act 1 is real quick. It's literally like you're on the porch, and Act 1 ends when you go inside. And then Act 3 sort of happens regardless of what happens in Act 2, no matter how much they find out or they don't. It also incorporates a seance that the players and the DM do. And I just like Alex said, doing charades with the players as you're trying to describe the headless guy that walked into town and he's trying to communicate. I think for one-shots, playing a different game that is not D&D within D&D, so doing a seance or playing charades for a bit, I think one-shots is the place to do that, unless your group really loves that sort of thing.
And you bringing up Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft reminded me, I'm going to give a plug to Josiah right now. So Dungeon Dad did a video about the Bagman from that. Excellent video. Got me thinking of all kinds of ideas. And I think a lot of people, they really latch on to this other monster that the community's come up with called the False Hydra, which Josiah has also covered. I think the False Hydra is overrated. And I think it usually ends up being a cluster to run. I'm just gonna guess. Talk yourself out of it if you thought it would be really cool. But look at the Bagman and Josiah's video and see if that inspires you with some one shots or anything.
Just because we talk about the charades and stuff like that. Good game if you want to just kind of look for ideas. It's called Mysterium. It's a board game. It's a fantastic game for trying to find ways of getting your point across, not very clearly, but to kind of get the idea across. It's like one person plays as a ghost and the people are detectives, and you're trying to figure out who killed the ghost, and all they have is these cards to give out, and the cards could be anything. It could be like a red flag with like swords around it and stuff like that, and you have to kind of guess what, based off the different clues and stuff like that, what they're trying to tell you. It could be the red, it could be the flag, it could be the sword, it could be the teddy bear in the corner, whatever it is.
So I know that game. I own it. It's a great game. You kind of inspired me that it would be cool to do a Halloween one shot about a ghost, but one of the players doesn't have a player character. They are the ghost. And you give them like some very specific tools, like the cards from Mysterium, where they try to give hints. The players look at it and they're like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. And they're like, and they can't talk. It would take a lot of work to figure out how this would be fun, but like that that's a cool game, and it inspired me.
We talked about the seance, and it's an interesting thing because you're trying to build up horror with this stuff, right? You're trying to build up, and if you've ever done a seance with your friends, a real seance where you start to ask, are there spirits around us, and you're doing this. And obviously with players, it's a little bit of an artificial environment, but this is how you have these ghosts appear. They don't all have to be just the ghost appears and attacks, right? This lamenting, a mother lamenting and crying about, or just the sound of a child. It's terrible lament, and you're saying this to the players, and they're feeling this, and you're building this, and then it just goes away. And I think that's because you're trying to build that sense of horror, and the seance is just an inherently creepy thing. And it's a way to introduce your ghosts without just having them come in and roll initiative or something like that. They come, the players can't interact. It's an incorporeal aspect of their personality. And the other thing I would say with Fred is exactly right. It's a great thing with Strahd. If you can have a thing, a ticking clock, like I had the thing where it happens at midnight, but if the players are screwing around or they're taking super long to do something that only takes a half an hour, you start to get to the end and it's not going to be midnight. So you may have to think about maybe the full moon or the moon is exposed by the clouds so that you can say, uh-oh, you look up and this is what's going to happen. And I think that's a really great device for one-shots to have some variable for that last hour. To think about that if you want to finish. If you don't want to finish, or if you say, hey guys, can we just come back the next time? And because I've done that, I just did a one shot with some people and we came back another time. They wanted to finish. And part of it was all that stuff we talked about. They took too long. There was some role playing going on that I was thinking, but Fred's ideas, that Strahd device is great for that. Let's truly do a one shot.
Something I liked most when I was a player in Rime of the Frost Maiden, and it's when someone in is just like, hey, we're doing a seance tonight. They're like, he's going to do a seance. He can talk to spirits. And so we're like, let's see if this is legit. So we go at midnight to this seance. DM starts having us roll for stuff, and we're like, what are we rolling for? And it's basically like how much everyone's like contributing to bringing the spirits. And the guy his eyes go white and he starts to float, and then it's right with the frost maiden, so it's cold, and on the window it's like someone starts writing a message, and it was so good. And then later I went to him and I was just like, hey, can I ask the spirit another question? But I was by myself, and the DM rolled again, and this time he became possessed, and it was like a really bad thing, and I had to fight this like poltergeist. And man, it was so cool because it was like, what's the DM rolling for? How's this gonna go? And so seances can be really cool. Like you said, it might feel artificial because you're playing it in the game, but it still works. Hope you all got some inspiration for your Halloween one shot. I'm really looking forward to trying to put one together. I'm obviously going through a whole bunch of ideas, including all the ideas that were shared here tonight. So let us know your ideas for Halloween one shots. Are you going to use any of the ideas? Are you going to use any of these ideas? Do you have any great ideas that you'd like to share in the comments? Let us know down below, and we'll see you in the next video.